Welcome, dear traveler of the evening hours, to this gentle sanctuary where knowledge meets tranquility. As the day releases its hold and the world outside grows quiet, you found your way here, perhaps carrying the weight of countless thoughts and the echoes of a busy day. Tonight, we embark on a fascinating journey through the landscape of the human mind, exploring 100 remarkable truths about our psychology that reveal the extraordinary nature of who we are. Let your shoulders drop, feel the tension melting away from your forehead, and allow your breathing to find its natural, peaceful rhythm. As we wander through these discoveries together, you may find your eyelids growing pleasantly heavy, your mind drifting between wakefulness and dreams. There's no need to remember everything we explore tonight. Simply let these insights wash over you like gentle waves, each one carrying you deeper into relaxation. The human mind holds mysteries more captivating than any story, patterns more beautiful than any artwork. And tonight, we'll unveil them one by one, creating a tapestry of understanding that will accompany you into restful sleep. Before we begin this soothing exploration, if you find comfort in these gentle journeys of discovery, perhaps you might consider touching the like button with a soft tap, letting others know this peaceful space exists. And if you'd like to return to this tranquil harbor of knowledge whenever you need it, the subscribe button awaits your gentle touch. In the comments below, share with our quiet community where in the world you're listening from and what time embraces you as you settle in. Your presence here creates a web of connection across time zones and continents, reminding us all that somewhere, someone else is also seeking peace through wonder. Our first fascinating truth about human psychology reveals that your brain uses about 20% of your body's total energy, despite being only 2% of your body weight. This remarkable organ, weighing roughly 3 pounds, consumes more resources than any other part of you, working tirelessly even as you rest. Right now, as you listen to these words, billions of neurons are firing in intricate patterns, creating your experience of this moment. This energy expenditure continues even in sleep, as your brain processes memories, solves problems, and maintains the symphony of your bodily functions. Think of your mind as a brilliant city that never truly sleeps, its lights dimming but never extinguishing, always humming with the quiet electricity of thought and dream. The phenomenon of emotional contagion demonstrates that we unconsciously mirror the emotions of those around us, like tuning forks resonating with the same frequency. When someone smiles genuinely at us, tiny muscles in our own face begin to echo that expression before we even realize it's happening. This automatic mimicry happens within milliseconds, faster than conscious thought, connecting us to others through invisible threads of shared feeling. In groups, this creates waves of emotion that ripple through crowds, explaining why laughter becomes more joyful when shared, why one person's anxiety can spread through a room, and why being around calm individuals helps us find our own peace. Your nervous system is constantly dancing with the emotional states of others, creating a beautiful choreography of human connection that happens beneath the surface of awareness. Memory formation follows a fascinating pattern where we remember the beginning and end of experiences more vividly than the middle, a phenomenon known as the serial position effect. Picture your memories as pearls on a string, with the first and last pearls shining brightest, while those in the center fade to a softer glow. This is why you might clearly recall how a vacation started and ended, but find the middle days blending together like watercolors. Your brain prioritizes these bookend moments, perhaps because beginnings set our expectations and endings shape our overall impression of events. This quirk of psychology influences everything from how we structure presentations to why movies put crucial scenes at specific points, working with the natural rhythm of human attention and recall. The mere exposure effect reveals that we tend to develop preferences for things simply because we encounter them repeatedly. This gentle psychological principle explains why a song you initially felt neutral about becomes beloved after hearing it several times, why familiar faces seem more trustworthy even when we know nothing about the person, and why comfort foods from childhood retain their special power throughout our lives. Your brain interprets familiarity as safety, creating warmth toward the known while maintaining caution toward the novel. This ancient wisdom served our ancestors well, helping them navigate a world where the familiar usually meant survival and the unknown could harbor danger. Even now, this preference shapes your choices in subtle ways, from the brands you trust to the routes you take through your day. Our brains process negative experiences about 5 times more intensely than positive ones, a tendency called negativity bias that once helped our ancestors survive by remembering dangers. Imagine your mind as a careful guardian, always slightly more attentive to shadows than to sunshine, keeping you safe through heightened awareness of potential threats. This explains why criticism stings more than praise uplifts, why we replay embarrassing moments from years ago while forgetting countless compliments, and why bad news seems to dominate our attention. Understanding this bias helps us recognize that our minds aren't being pessimistic, but protective, carrying ancient programming that once meant the difference between life and death. In our modern world, we can acknowledge this tendency and consciously balance it by deliberately savoring positive moments, knowing we need to give them extra attention to match the weight our brains naturally give to challenges. The phenomenon of cognitive dissonance creates an uncomfortable feeling when we hold conflicting beliefs or when our actions don't align with our values. Picture 2 musical notes that clash when played together, creating a discord that our minds desperately want to resolve into harmony. When we experience this psychological tension, we often unconsciously adjust our beliefs to match our actions rather than changing our behavior, like a river finding the easiest path around an obstacle. This is why someone who makes a difficult sacrifice for something often values it more highly afterward, their mind resolving the dissonance by increasing the perceived worth of their choice. This mental mechanism helps maintain our sense of consistency and identity, even though it can sometimes lead us to rationalize decisions we might otherwise question. Your brain creates your entire perception of reality with a delay of about 80 milliseconds, meaning you're always experiencing a slightly edited version of the present moment. Like a masterful film editor, your brain takes raw sensory data and constructs a seamless narrative, filling in gaps and smoothing over inconsistencies before presenting it to your conscious awareness. This tiny delay allows your mind to predict what's about to happen, helping a baseball player hit a fastball that would otherwise be impossible to track, enabling a musician to stay in rhythm with others, and allowing you to catch a falling object before you fully processed that it's while falling. You live in a beautifully crafted simulation of reality, created by your brain's interpretation of signals arriving from your senses at different speeds and times. The spacing effect demonstrates that we learn information more effectively when we spread our study sessions over time, rather than cramming everything at once. Imagine planting seeds in a garden where each watering session allows roots to grow deeper versus flooding the soil once and hoping for the best. Your brain consolidates memories during the intervals between learning sessions, strengthening neural pathways like a path through the forest becomes clearer with repeated use. This is why reviewing information after a day, then a week, then a month creates more durable memories than studying for hours straight. Sleep plays a crucial role in this process, acting as a gentle gardener that tends to newly planted memories, helping them take root in the rich soil of your long-term memory. The spotlight effect causes us to overestimate how much other people notice our appearance and behavior, as if we're constantly on a brightly lit stage. In reality, others are far too preoccupied with their own spotlights to pay as much attention to us as we imagine. That embarrassing moment you replay in your mind was likely barely registered by witnesses who were busy navigating their own inner worlds. This psychological quirk means we walk through life feeling more observed than we actually are, creating unnecessary self-consciousness about minor imperfections that others rarely notice. Understanding this effect can be deeply liberating, like discovering that the audience you've been performing for was mostly looking at their own reflection all along. Mirror neurons fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing that same action, creating a neurological bridge between self and other. These remarkable cells, discovered relatively recently in the timeline of neuroscience, help explain the foundations of empathy, learning, and social connection. When you watch someone reach for a glass of water, the same neurons that would fire if you were reaching activate in your brain, creating a shadow experience of their action. This neural mirroring helps us understand others' intentions, learn through observation, and feel what others feel. It's why seeing someone yawn makes you yawn, why watching someone get hurt makes you wince, and why emotions seem contagious in groups. The peak end rule reveals that we judge experiences largely based on how they felt at their most intense point and how they ended, rather than their overall average. Your memory acts like a highlight reel editor, selecting the crescendo and the finale while letting the middle movements fade. This is why a vacation with one spectacular day and a pleasant journey home feels better in memory than a consistently good trip that ended with flight delays. Dentists who understand this principle now end procedures with less painful cleaning rather than the most uncomfortable work, knowing that the ending colors the entire memory. This quirk of recall shapes how we evaluate our past and make decisions about our future, teaching us that endings matter more than we might rationally expect. Your working memory can hold approximately 7 items at once, give or take 2, like a juggler who can keep only so many balls in the air before they start falling. This limitation, discovered by psychologist George Miller, explains why phone numbers were traditionally 7 digits, why we chunk information into smaller groups to remember it, and why multitasking becomes increasingly difficult as we add more elements. Your conscious mind operates with this small window of immediate awareness, constantly updating what it holds as new information arrives and older items fade. This constraint shapes how we think, learn, and solve problems, forcing us to be selective about what we attend to in each moment. The anchoring bias causes us to rely too heavily on the first piece of information we receive when making decisions. Like a ship dropping anchor, our minds fix on that initial reference point and judge everything else in relation to it. This is why the first price you see for an item influences what feels expensive or cheap afterward. Why first impressions carry such weight in how we perceive people, and why negotiators carefully consider their opening offers. Your brain uses these anchors as shortcuts to make sense of complex information, but they can skew your judgment in ways you don't realize. Even when you know about this bias, its influence persists, subtly shaping your evaluations like an invisible current beneath the surface of conscious thought. The bystander effect reveals that people are less likely to help someone in need when others are present, each assuming someone else will take action. This counterintuitive phenomenon transforms crowds from potential sources of aid into barriers to assistance, as responsibility diffuses like light spreading through a prism. The more witnesses to an emergency, the less likely any individual feels personally responsible for responding. This psychological principle has shaped emergency training protocols, teaching people to assign specific tasks to specific individuals rather than calling for general help. Understanding this effect empowers us to overcome it, to be the one who breaks the spell of collective inaction by taking that first crucial step. Your brain physically changes structure based on your experiences and thoughts, a remarkable property called neuroplasticity that continues throughout your entire life. Like a river carving new channels through a landscape, your repeated thoughts and behaviors create and strengthen neural pathways while unused connections fade away. As you're listening to these words right now, tiny changes are occurring in your brain. New connections forming between neurons, like bridges being built between islands of understanding. This means you're never truly stuck with the brain you have today. Musicians develop larger areas devoted to finger movement. London taxi drivers grow bigger spatial memory regions, and meditation practitioners show increased grey matter in areas associated with awareness and compassion. Every day, through your choices and experiences, you're literally sculpting your brain's architecture. The 21-day habit formation myth has been replaced by research showing habits actually take an average of 66 days to become automatic, though this varies widely between individuals and behaviors. Like a path through tall grass that needs many footsteps before it becomes clear. New behavioral patterns require consistent repetition before they feel natural. Simple habits like drinking water after waking might solidify in just 18 days, while complex ones, like establishing an exercise routine, could take 254 days or more. Your brain builds habits by creating efficient neural highways for repeated behaviors, allowing them to run on autopilot and free up conscious thought for other tasks. This automation is why you can drive a familiar route while your mind wanders, your hands and feet performing complex, coordinated movements without deliberate attention. The forgetting curve demonstrates that we lose about 50% of new information within an hour unless we actively work to retain it. Imagine memories as sandcastles on a beach, with waves of time gradually washing away their details unless we rebuild and reinforce them. After 24 hours, we typically retain only 30% of what we learned, and after 6 days, that drops to about 25%. This isn't a flaw, but a feature, as forgetting helps us filter out irrelevant information and prevent our minds from becoming cluttered with unnecessary details. Your brain is constantly making decisions about what deserves precious storage space, keeping information that gets retrieved and used while letting unused memories fade like footprints in snow. The paradox of choice reveals that having too many options can actually decrease our satisfaction and increase anxiety. Like standing in a vast library feeling overwhelmed rather than excited, abundance can paradoxically lead to paralysis and regret. When faced with dozens of breakfast cereals or hundreds of television channels, our brains struggle to process all possibilities, leading to decision fatigue and doubt about our choices. Research shows that people are more satisfied with purchases when choosing from smaller, curated selections than from extensive arrays. This psychological principle explains why successful companies often simplify their product lines and why minimalism can feel so liberating. Your mind seeks the sweet spot between enough choice to feel autonomous and not so much that evaluation becomes exhausting. Confirmation bias leads us to seek information that supports our existing beliefs while avoiding or dismissing contradictory evidence. Your mind acts like a detective who has already decided who the culprit is, gathering clues that support the conclusion while overlooking those that don't fit. This isn't conscious dishonesty, but an automatic process that helps us maintain a coherent worldview and protect our sense of identity. Social media algorithms often amplify this tendency by showing us content similar to what we've already engaged with, creating echo chambers that reinforce our perspectives. Understanding this bias is like having a map of your own mental blind spots, allowing you to consciously seek out different viewpoints and question your assumptions. The Dunning-Kruger effect describes how people with limited knowledge in a domain often overestimate their competence, while experts tend to underestimate theirs. Picture a mountain of understanding where beginners stand in the foothills believing they can see the whole landscape, while those who've climbed higher realize how much more mountain extends beyond their view. This creates the curious situation where confidence and competence can have an inverse relationship at certain stages of learning. The less we know about something, the less we realize there is to know. Like someone who's learned 3 chords on a guitar, thinking they're nearly a musician. Meanwhile, experts see the vast complexity of their field and assume others must surely know what they know. Your attention works like a spotlight with adjustable focus, able to narrow intensely on one thing or broaden to take in more of your surroundings. This attentional flexibility allows you to thread a needle with precise concentration, then shift to scanning a crowd for a familiar face. Right now, you could focus on the sound of these words so intently that background noises disappear, or you could expand your awareness to notice the temperature of the air, the feeling of wherever you're resting, the rhythm of your breathing. This constant dance between focused and diffuse attention happens automatically throughout your day. Your brain deciding moment by moment how to deploy this precious resource based on your goals and the demands of your environment. The mere thought of exercising activates some of the same neural pathways as actually exercising, though to a much lesser degree. Mental rehearsal lights up motor cortex regions like a dim preview of the real performance, which is why athletes visualize their routines and musicians practice pieces in their minds. This phenomenon extends beyond physical activities, as your brain often can't fully distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. When you imagine biting into a lemon, your mouth might water. When you visualize a peaceful beach, your stress hormones might decrease. This blurring between thought and experience reveals how powerful our mental simulations can be, offering a gateway to influence our physical and emotional states through the theater of imagination. The generation effect that shows we remember information better when we generate it ourselves, rather than simply reading or hearing it. Like the difference between watching someone paint and holding the brush yourself, active creation embeds memories more deeply than passive consumption. This is why teaching someone else what you've learned strengthens your own understanding, why writing notes by hand often works better than typing, and why solving a puzzle stays with you longer than being told the answer. Your brain treats self-generated information as more valuable, perhaps because the effort of creation signals importance. Every time you explain something in your own words or work through a problem yourself, you're building stronger, more accessible memories. Social facilitation means we perform simple or well-practiced tasks better in the presence of others, but struggle with complex or new tasks when observed. Imagine your skills as instruments that either sing or stumble depending on the audience. When you know something well, like riding a bicycle or typing on a keyboard, having watchers actually enhances your performance, your movements becoming smoother and more confident. But when learning something new or tackling difficult problems, those same observers can cause your performance to deteriorate, like trying to solve a puzzle while someone watches over your shoulder. This ancient response likely helped our ancestors display competence to their tribe while protecting them from revealing weakness when struggling with challenges. The halo effect causes us to generalize from one positive trait to assume other positive characteristics. When we find someone physically attractive, we're more likely to assume they're also intelligent, kind, and competent, as if beauty casts a golden light that colors everything else about them. This cognitive shortcut extends beyond appearance, as someone good at one thing seems mysteriously better at unrelated things. A talented musician might be assumed to have wisdom about life. A successful business person might be considered an expert on politics, and a kind gesture might make us overlook obvious flaws. This mental tendency reveals how our brains prefer simple, consistent stories about people rather than complex, contradictory realities. Your sense of self is not located in any single brain region, but emerges from the coordinated activity of multiple neural networks, like a symphony arising from many instruments playing together. Your identity is a dynamic creation rather than a fixed entity. The medial prefrontal cortex contributes self-referential thinking. The posterior cingulate cortex adds autobiographical memory. The temporoparietal junction provides perspective taking, and dozens of other regions add their voices to the chorus. This distributed nature of selfhood explains why brain injuries can alter personality in surprising ways, and why practices like meditation, which change brain activity patterns, can shift our sense of who we are. You are not a thing, but a process, constantly being recreated by the dancing patterns of neural activity. The frequency illusion, also called the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, makes something seem suddenly common after we first notice it. Learn a new word and suddenly you encounter it everywhere. Consider buying a certain car and the roads seem filled with that model. Your brain hasn't changed reality, but has simply tagged this information as relevant, causing your attention to snap to it like a magnet to metal. This selective attention creates the illusion that the frequency has increased when really your awareness has sharpened. Before you noticed it, your brain filtered it out as background noise, but now it lights up in your perception like highlighted text on a page. Emotions typically last only 90 seconds in the body unless we continue to trigger them with our thoughts. Like a wave that naturally rises and falls, the physiological cascade of emotion, the rush of chemicals and body sensations, completes its cycle in about a minute and a half. What extends emotions for hours or days is our tendency to replay the triggering thoughts, like pressing play on the same song repeatedly. Each time you revisit what made you angry or anxious, you initiate a fresh 90-second chemical response, creating the illusion of one long emotional experience. Understanding this can be profoundly liberating, revealing that we have more control over our emotional duration than we might believe. The planning fallacy leads us to consistently underestimate how long tasks will take, even when we have experience with similar projects. We imagine ideal scenarios where everything flows smoothly, forgetting the inevitable interruptions, complications, and necessary breaks that reality always includes. This optimistic bias persists even when we try to account for it, like a persistent optical illusion that tricks us even when we know it's an illusion. Students underestimate homework time, contractors underestimate project duration, and we all underestimate how long our morning routines actually take. Your brain seems to plan for the best-case scenario while experiencing the typical case reality, creating a perpetual gap between expectation and experience. The primacy effect in social psychology shows that early information about someone disproportionately shapes our overall impression of them, like an artist's first brushstrokes that set the tone for an entire painting. Initial encounters create a framework through which we interpret everything that follows. If someone is described as intelligent before being described as envious, we form a more positive impression than if those same traits are presented in reverse order. This psychological tendency means that first dates, job interviews, and opening paragraphs carry weight beyond their brevity. Your brain uses these early impressions as anchors, adjusting slightly for new information, but rarely completely revising the initial judgment. False memories can be surprisingly easy to create and often feel as real as genuine memories. Your brain doesn't simply retrieve memories like files from a cabinet, but reconstructs them each time, like rebuilding a puzzle where some pieces might get substituted or rearranged. Suggestion, imagination, and repetition can plant memories of events that never happened, complete with sensory details and emotional resonance. Studies have shown people can be convinced they got lost in a mall as children, met Bugs Bunny at Disneyland despite him being a Warner Brothers character, or even committed crimes they didn't commit. This malleability of memory isn't a flaw, but a consequence of how our brains efficiently store and reconstruct experiences, prioritizing meaning and coherence over perfect accuracy. The endowment effect makes us value things more highly simply because we own them. A mug that you might pay $5 to buy suddenly seems worth $10 when it becomes yours, as if possession adds invisible value. This psychological quirk affects everything from household items to ideas and beliefs. Once something becomes ours, we feel its loss more keenly than we appreciated its gain, creating an asymmetry between buying and selling prices. This might explain why people keep clothes they never wear, struggle to sell homes at market price, and defend positions more strongly once they've publicly claimed them. Ownership creates an emotional bond that transcends objective value. Your circadian rhythm influences not just sleep, but also mood, alertness, creativity, and physical performance throughout the day. Like an internal conductor orchestrating various biological symphonies, this roughly 24-hour cycle coordinates hundreds of bodily processes. Your body temperature rises and falls predictably, hormone levels fluctuate in patterns, and even your pain tolerance changes with the time of day. Most people experience peak alertness in late morning, a post-lunch dip in the afternoon, and a second wind in early evening. Creative insights often come more easily when we're slightly tired because our reduced focus allows more distant associations to surface. Understanding your personal rhythm helps you align demanding tasks with peak performance times and routine work with natural lulls. The availability heuristic causes us to overestimate the likelihood of events we can easily recall. Vivid, recent, or emotionally charged memories feel more probable than statistics suggest, like judging the depth of a lake by the clarity of its surface. This is why people often fear plane crashes more than car accidents, despite cars being far more dangerous. Why lottery winners make the jackpot seem attainable, and why a single news story about a shark attack can empty beaches for miles. Your brain uses the ease of recall as a proxy for probability, assuming that if you can quickly think of examples, it must be common. This mental shortcut worked well in small communities where personal experience reflected reality, but can mislead us in a world where dramatic events from anywhere reach us instantly. Cognitive load affects decision-making quality, with mental fatigue leading to poorer choices and increased reliance on shortcuts. Your mind is like a computer with limited processing power. When too many programs run simultaneously, everything slows down. After making many decisions, even small ones, like what to wear or eat, your ability to make good choices degrades. A phenomenon called decision fatigue. This is why judges give harsher sentences before lunch when they're hungry and tired. Why shopping for groceries when exhausted leads to impulse purchases, and why important decisions are best made when mentally fresh. Understanding this helps us structure our days to protect our cognitive resources for what matters most. The facial feedback hypothesis suggests that our facial expressions can influence our emotions, not just reflect them. When you smile, even without feeling happy, the physical act sends signals to your brain that can actually improve your mood. Holding a pencil in your teeth, which forces a smile-like expression, has been shown to make cartoons seem funnier. Similarly, furrowing your brow can intensify feelings of confusion or concern. This bidirectional relationship between expression and emotion means your face isn't just displaying your internal state, but actively participating in creating it. Like a feedback loop between body and mind, your muscles and emotions dance together in ways that blur the line between cause and effect. The Google effect, also called digital amnesia, describes how we're less likely to remember information we know we can easily access again. Your brain, ever efficient, seems to treat the internet as an external hard drive, remembering where to find information rather than the information itself. Phone numbers, directions, and facts that once resided in memory now live in devices, freeing cognitive resources for other tasks, but potentially weakening our memory muscles. This isn't necessarily negative. It's an adaptation to our environment, like how writing reduced our need for oral memory traditions. Your brain is learning to work in partnership with technology, creating a kind of extended mind that reaches beyond your skull. Implicit biases operate below conscious awareness, influencing our judgments and behaviors in ways we don't intend or realize. These automatic associations, formed through lifetime exposure to cultural messages and patterns, affect everyone regardless of consciously held beliefs. Like an invisible current beneath calm water, they pull our decisions in directions we might not choose if we were fully aware. Studies reveal how identical resumes receive different responses based on names suggesting race or gender, how teachers call on boys more often than girls in math classes, and how doctors prescribe pain medication differently based on patient demographics. Recognizing these hidden influences is the first step toward countering them, like adjusting your steering when you know the road slopes to one side. The sunk cost fallacy leads us to continue investing in something because of previously invested resources, even when it's no longer rational to do so. Like throwing good money after bad, we persist with failing projects, unfulfilling relationships, or boring books because we've already put time, money, or effort into them. Your brain struggles to accept that past investments are gone regardless of future choices, creating a psychological trap where losses feel recoverable through continued investment. This is why people sit through terrible movies they paid for, stay in careers that make them miserable after years of training, or continue waiting for buses that are increasingly late. The rational choice considers only future costs and benefits, but our emotions tangle past and future together. Mental contrasting, imagining both desired outcomes and potential obstacles, proves more effective for achieving goals than positive thinking alone. While visualizing success feels good, pairing it with realistic consideration of challenges creates a productive tension that motivates action. Like a navigator who charts both the destination and the rocky passages ahead, this balanced approach helps your brain prepare for the actual journey rather than just the arrival. Studies show that people who practice mental contrasting are more likely to exercise regularly, improve academic performance, and maintain healthy relationships. Pure optimism might lift your spirits, but combining dreams with pragmatic planning builds the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Your brain processes metaphorical and literal cleanliness in overlapping regions, creating surprising connections between physical and moral purity. Washing your hands can actually reduce feelings of guilt, a phenomenon researchers call the Macbeth effect. People judge moral transgressions more harshly in disgusting environments and rate cleaning products as more desirable after lying. This neural overlap explains why religions incorporate washing rituals, why we speak of dirty secrets and clean consciences, and why corruption is described as filth. Your abstract moral concepts are grounded in physical experiences, with bodily sensations of cleanliness influencing ethical judgments in ways that reveal how deeply embodied our thinking truly is. The reminiscence bump explains why people disproportionately recall memories from adolescence and early adulthood. Between ages 15 and 30, we experience many firsts: first love, leaving home, choosing careers, forming adult identities. These novel experiences create vivid memories that resist fading, like photographs taken with especially bright flash. Your brain encodes these formative years with extra detail and emotion, making them feel more significant in retrospect. This is why music from your youth triggers stronger nostalgia, why high school memories seem especially clear decades later, and why elderly people often tell stories from their 20s and 30s. The reminiscence bump shapes personal narratives, making those transformative years feel like the defining chapters of our life stories. Semantic satiation occurs when repeating a word causes it to temporarily lose meaning, becoming just a collection of sounds. Say any word 30 times and watch it transform from meaningful symbol to strange noise, like a familiar face becoming alien when stared at too long. This happens because neurons responsible for processing that word's meaning become fatigued from overuse, temporarily unable to maintain the connection between sound and significance. This curious phenomenon reveals how fragile the link between words and meanings actually is, held together by neural patterns that can tire like muscles. Every word you know is just a sound that your brain has learned to associate with meaning, a magic trick that occasionally reveals itself when repetition breaks the spell. The curse of knowledge makes it difficult to imagine not knowing something once you know it. Like trying to unhear a song or unsee an image, your brain struggles to simulate ignorance about familiar information. This creates communication challenges as experts forget what it's like to be beginners, using jargon and skipping steps that seem obvious to them but mystifying to newcomers. Teachers must constantly fight this curse to remain effective. Parents forget the genuinely puzzling nature of concepts their children struggle with, and instructions written by people who know the process often omit crucial details. Your knowledge becomes a lens you can't remove, coloring how you perceive and explain the world. Change blindness reveals how much of what we think we see is actually constructed from assumption and memory, rather than continuous observation. Large changes in visual scenes can go completely unnoticed if they occur during brief interruptions, like eye movements or film cuts. People fail to notice when conversation partners are replaced by different people during brief obscuring, when background objects vanish between glances, or when significant details change in photographs they're examining. Your brain creates the illusion of complete visual awareness by filling in gaps with expectations, like a painter touching up a canvas with educated guesses. This efficiency allows you to navigate the world without overwhelming information processing, but means you're experiencing a partially fictional version of reality. The Ben Franklin effect suggests that we grow to like people we do favors for, rather than just doing favors for people we like. When you help someone, your brain seeks to resolve the cognitive dissonance by deciding you must like them. Otherwise, why would you have helped? This reverses the expected causal arrow between affection and assistance. Franklin himself discovered this when he asked a rival to lend him a rare book. The man became friendlier afterward. This psychological principle reveals how our actions shape our attitudes as much as our attitudes shape our actions. Small requests for help can build rapport more effectively than offering help, creating a paradox where asking for favors generates more goodwill than granting them. Priming influences our thoughts and behaviors through exposure to stimuli we're not consciously aware of processing. Like invisible hands guiding your choices, subtle cues in your environment shape decisions in ways you don't realize. People walk more slowly after reading words related to elderly people, become more cooperative in rooms with briefcases than backpacks, and rate neutral faces as more hostile after exposure to violent imagery. Your brain is constantly scanning for relevant information, with these background processes influencing foreground thoughts. This happens in marketing, where luxury brands prime feelings of sophistication, in testing environments where posters of eyes increase honest behavior, and in daily life, where morning news sets emotional tone for hours afterward. The paradox of unanimity suggests that perfect agreement among witnesses or experts can actually indicate lower reliability than some disagreement would. When everyone agrees completely, it might signal groupthink, pressure to conform, or systemic bias, rather than independent confirmation of truth. Like a chord that sounds richer with slight dissonance than perfect tuning, some variation in testimony often indicates more authentic, independent observations. Police know that when witness statements match too perfectly, they might be rehearsed. Scientists expect some variation in experimental results. Identical outcomes suggest possible fraud. Your brain should actually be more skeptical of perfect consensus than moderate agreement, recognizing that genuine independent observers rarely see things identically. Emotional granularity, the ability to distinguish between subtle variations in feelings, correlates with better emotional regulation and mental health. People who can differentiate between feeling disappointed, discouraged, and dejected handle negative emotions more effectively than those who simply feel bad. Like a painter with more colors creating richer paintings, expanded emotional vocabulary allows more precise understanding and response to internal states. This granularity develops through attention and practice, learning to notice the difference between anxiety and excitement, between contentment and joy, between irritation and anger. Your emotional landscape becomes more navigable when you can name its features precisely, transforming vague discomfort into specific, addressable experiences. The default mode network activates when your mind wanders, revealing that the brain at rest is far from idle. This network, discovered through brain imaging, becomes active during daydreaming, autobiographical planning, moral reasoning, and imagining future scenarios. Like a computer running background maintenance during downtime, your resting brain consolidates memories, processes emotions, and makes creative connections between disparate ideas. This is why insights often arrive in the shower, why problems solve themselves overnight, and why boredom can spark creativity. The modern world's constant stimulation might deprive us of this valuable processing time, like never allowing a computer to complete its updates. Probability neglect causes us to focus on outcomes while ignoring their likelihood, treating unlikely events as more probable when they trigger strong emotions. The vivid image of winning the lottery overshadows its mathematical improbability. The fear of a shark attack eclipses its rarity. Your emotional brain doesn't naturally think in percentages, but in possibilities, responding to what could happen rather than what probably will. This is why people buy lottery tickets while underinsuring against likely risks, why rare diseases feel threatening after media coverage, and why we worry about plane crashes more than car accidents. Understanding probability intellectually doesn't eliminate emotional responses to vivid possibilities, creating a gap between what we know and how we feel. The pratfall effect shows that competent people become more likable after making minor mistakes. Perfect people seem less relatable and potentially threatening, while small imperfections humanize those we admire, like a tiny crack in porcelain that somehow makes it more beautiful. Minor flaws can enhance rather than diminish appeal. This only works when baseline competence is established as mistakes without competence just confirm incompetence. Brilliant professor who drops their coffee becomes endearing. A student who constantly struggles gains no sympathy from additional errors. Your brain seems calibrated to trust and like people who demonstrate both capability and humanity, finding pure perfection suspicious or alienating. Functional fixedness limits our ability to see objects beyond their intended use, trapping us in conventional thinking. A hammer becomes only a hammer, not a potential paperweight, doorstop, or pendulum weight. This mental rigidity increases under time pressure when we default to familiar functions rather than exploring possibilities. Children, less bound by conventional uses, often solve problems requiring creative tool use better than adults. Your brain's efficiency in categorizing objects by function becomes a prison preventing innovative solutions. Breaking functional fixedness requires conscious effort to see beyond labels, to consider what properties an object has rather than what it's called, transforming limitation into opportunity. The spotlight of attention enhances whatever it illuminates while suppressing surrounding information. Focus acts like a volume knob, turning up relevant signals while turning down everything else. This selective enhancement allows you to hear your name across a noisy room, spot a friend in a crowd, or read while ignoring background conversations. But this same mechanism means you miss obvious things outside your attention, like the famous invisible gorilla that people don't notice when counting basketball passes. Your reality is constantly edited by attention, creating a personalized version of the world based on what you deem important moment to moment. Temporal discounting makes future rewards seem less valuable than immediate ones, even when the future reward is objectively better. Your brain treats time like distance, with faraway rewards appearing smaller, just as faraway objects look smaller. This explains why saving for retirement feels less urgent than current spending, why we procrastinate on important but non-urgent tasks, and why diets fail when immediate pleasure overshadows distant health benefits. Evolution shaped us for immediate survival rather than long-term planning, creating a mismatch with modern life's delayed gratifications. Understanding this bias helps explain why willpower feels so difficult, as we're literally fighting against our brain's natural time preferences. The illusion of explanatory depth reveals that we understand less about how things work than we think we do. Ask someone to explain how a toilet flushes, a zipper works, or a bicycle stays upright, and watch confidence crumble into uncertainty. We mistake familiarity for understanding, assuming that because we can use something or recognize it, we comprehend its mechanisms. This overconfidence extends to complex systems like politics, economics, and climate, where people hold strong opinions based on superficial knowledge. Your brain creates an illusion of understanding that only dissolves when you attempt detailed explanation, revealing the difference between knowing that something works and knowing how it works. The consistency bias leads us to overestimate how consistent our beliefs and behaviors have been over time. We remember ourselves as having always held our current views, editing our personal histories to create more coherent narratives. Like a writer revising earlier chapters to match the ending, your memory adjusts past attitudes to align with present ones. People who now exercise regularly forget their sedentary years. Those who changed political parties minimize their previous convictions. This isn't conscious deception, but automatic narrative smoothing, helping maintain a stable sense of identity. Your brain prefers stories where characters, including yourself, remain recognizably themselves, rather than acknowledging how much you've actually changed. Attribute substitution occurs when faced with difficult questions, causing our brains to unconsciously answer easier, related questions instead. Asked to evaluate someone's competence, we might judge their confidence. Asked about happiness, we report current mood. Asked about probability, we assess similarity. Like a student changing a hard test question into one they can answer. Your brain performs this substitution so smoothly, you don't notice it happening. This mental shortcut usually works well enough, but can lead to systematic errors when the substitute question misses important aspects of the original. Complex judgments get reduced to simpler ones. Nuance gets lost in the translation, and we confidently answer questions we've never actually considered. The peak shift effect in psychology shows that exaggerated versions of preferred stimuli often trigger stronger positive responses than realistic versions. This explains why caricatures can seem more like someone than photographs, why animated characters with impossibly large eyes appear cute, and why sweetness beyond what occurs in nature proves irresistible. Your brain responds to supernormal stimuli, artificial exaggerations of naturally attractive features, like baby birds responding more strongly to fake eggs, larger than real ones. This principle underlies much of modern design, from enlarged car grilles that signal power to impossibly saturated food photography that triggers hunger. We're drawn to heightened versions of reality that push our psychological buttons harder than nature ever intended. Moral licensing reveals that past good behavior can paradoxically increase likelihood of subsequent bad behavior. After demonstrating virtue, people feel they've earned the right to be less virtuous, like building up moral credit to spend later. Someone who chooses the healthy salad for lunch might order dessert, feeling their earlier restraint grants permission for indulgence. Expressing progressive attitudes can reduce actual progressive behavior, as if stating good intentions partially satisfies the goal of being good. This psychological pattern means that moral behavior isn't consistent, but fluctuates like a bank account where good deeds create withdrawable balance. Your brain keeps an unconscious tally of your moral standing, granting license to stray when the balance feels positive. The rhymer's reason effect makes statements that rhyme seem more truthful than equivalent non-rhyming statements. What sobriety conceals, alcohol reveals, feels more profound than what sobriety hides, alcohol shows, though they mean the same thing. This cognitive bias explains the enduring power of proverbs, the effectiveness of advertising jingles, and why rhyming legal arguments prove more persuasive to juries. Your brain processes rhyming statements more fluently, and this ease of processing gets misinterpreted as truth. Like a key that fits smoothly into a lock, rhyming ideas slip more easily into belief, bypassing critical evaluation through aesthetic appeal. The effort justification phenomenon causes us to value outcomes more highly when we work hard for them. Like a mountain peak that seems more beautiful because of the difficult climb, achievements requiring struggle feel more meaningful than those easily obtained. This helps explain hazing rituals, difficult initiation ceremonies, and why people become more committed to groups that are hard to join. Your brain resolves the dissonance between effort spent and outcome received by inflating the outcome's value, convincing yourself the struggle was worthwhile. This can be adaptive, helping us persist through challenges, but can also trap us in situations where we've invested so much effort that we can't acknowledge the outcome isn't worth it. The illusion of control makes us believe we have more influence over outcomes than we actually do. Gamblers develop elaborate rituals believing they affect dice rolls. People press elevator buttons repeatedly thinking it speeds arrival, and we all have lucky items we believe influence random events. Your brain struggles to accept randomness, preferring to see patterns and causal connections even where none exist. This tendency helps us feel less vulnerable in an unpredictable world, transforming chaos into something seemingly manageable through imagined influence, like a child with a toy steering wheel, believing they're driving the car. We create comforting illusions of control that help us navigate uncertainty with less anxiety. The online disinhibition effect causes people to behave differently in digital spaces than they would face-to-face. Behind screens, the absence of immediate social feedback, physical presence, and real-time consequences loosens our usual behavioral restraints. Like wearing an invisible mask, online interaction can bring out both the best and worst in human nature, enabling both remarkable kindness to strangers and shocking cruelty. This psychological shift isn't about revealing true selves, but about how different contexts activate different aspects of personality. Your brain treats digital interaction as fundamentally different from physical presence, relaxing social monitoring systems that evolved for in-person encounters. The focusing illusion exaggerates the importance of any single factor when we think about it. Contemplating how weather affects happiness makes climate seem crucial. Thinking about income makes money appear central to well-being. Focusing on relationships makes them seem like everything, like a magnifying glass that makes whatever it examines appear larger. Attention distorts proportion. This explains why people overestimate how much happier they'd be with more money, better weather, or different circumstances. Your brain mistakes current focus for general importance, like judging the significance of a musical instrument by how loud it sounds when played alone versus in an orchestra. Denomination effect shows we spend smaller bills more readily than large ones, even when the value is identical. A $20 bill feels more spendable than a 50, 4 fives more than a 20. This psychological anchoring to physical form, rather than abstract value, affects financial behavior in predictable ways. Breaking large bills feels like a significant event, creating a psychological barrier to spending. Your brain treats money differently based on its physical representation, as if larger bills carry more weight than their monetary value alone. This quirk influences everything from tip amounts to savings rates, showing how the form of money affects our relationship with it. The repetition bias in memory causes us to believe repeated statements more than single presentations, regardless of truth. Advertisers know this, politicians exploit it, and misinformation spreads through it. Your brain uses repetition as a signal of importance and validity, like a path becoming more trusted the more it's traveled. This mental shortcut served our ancestors well in small communities where repeated information usually came from multiple sources and reflected consensus. In our modern information environment, where single sources can repeat messages endlessly, this bias becomes a vulnerability. Truth doesn't become truer through repetition, but your brain acts as if it does. Social proof powerfully influences behavior, causing us to look to others for cues about appropriate action. When uncertain, we assume the crowd knows something we don't, following their lead like schools of fish moving as one. This explains why laugh tracks make shows seem funnier, why busy restaurants attract more customers, and why social media likes influence our opinions. Your brain evolved in tribal settings where group behavior often signaled important information about safety and opportunity. This ancient wisdom becomes complicated in modern settings where crowds can be wrong, manipulated, or following each other in circles of false confidence. The self-serving bias leads us to attribute successes to internal factors while blaming failures on external circumstances. When you ace a test, it's because you're smart and studied hard. When you fail, the test was unfair or you were unlucky. This protective mechanism maintains self-esteem and motivation, like a psychological immune system fighting off threats to our self-concept. Everyone exhibits this bias to some degree, creating a world where everyone believes they're above average drivers, better than typical employees, and more moral than most people. Your brain works hard to maintain a positive self-image, editing the story of your life to cast you as the capable protagonist facing challenging circumstances. Hindsight bias makes past events seem more predictable than they were, transforming surprises into inevitable outcomes. After learning results, we convince ourselves we knew it all along, forgetting our actual uncertainty. Like reading a mystery novel for the second time and feeling the clues were obvious, your brain reconstructs history to seem more predictable than it was. This creates overconfidence in our ability to predict future events and unfair judgment of others who didn't foresee what now seems obvious. Understanding this bias helps us appreciate the genuine difficulty of prediction and the role of uncertainty in life's unfolding. The scarcity principle makes things seem more valuable when they're less available. Limited time offers trigger urgency, exclusive memberships feel more prestigious, and rare items command higher prices regardless of intrinsic worth. Your brain evolved in environments where scarcity often signaled genuine value, as resources that were hard to obtain were usually important for survival. This ancient programming now responds to artificial scarcity, making us desire things more intensely when told we might not be able to have them. Like children suddenly wanting toys when told they can't have them, we're all susceptible to the psychological pull of scarcity. Cognitive reappraisal allows us to change emotional responses by changing how we think about situations. Viewing challenges as opportunities, setbacks as learning experiences, or criticism as feedback transforms emotional impact without changing external reality. Like adjusting the lens through which you view the world, reappraisal offers a powerful tool for emotional regulation. Your brain's emotional response depends not just on what happens, but on how you interpret what happens. This isn't about denial or false positivity, but about choosing perspectives that serve you better. Master this skill and you hold the keys to your emotional kingdom, able to find calm in chaos and opportunity in obstacle. The verbalization effect shows that describing faces actually impairs our ability to recognize them later. Putting visual information into words seems to interfere with visual memory, like trying to capture a sunset in text and losing the actual image. This verbal overshadowing extends beyond faces to wine tasting, color matching, and other perceptual judgments, where language proves inadequate to capture sensory richness. Your brain processes verbal and visual information differently, and forcing translation between systems can corrupt the original encoding. Sometimes, the most accurate memory is the one left unspoken, preserved in its native format, rather than translated into words. Behavioral contagion spreads actions through groups like viruses, from yawning to emotions to purchasing decisions. Watch someone check their phone and feel the urge to check yours. See someone scratch and suddenly feel itchy. Witness panic and feel anxiety rising. Your brain contains specialized systems for detecting and mimicking others' behaviors, creating waves of synchronized action that ripple through crowds. This automatic copying helped our ancestors coordinate group behavior for survival, but now influences everything from fashion trends to stock market crashes. Understanding behavioral contagion helps explain how individual actions become collective movements, spreading through human networks like wildfire through dry grass. The fresh start effect shows that temporal landmarks like New Year's, birthdays, or Mondays motivate behavior change. These moments feel like natural breaking points where we can shed past failures and begin anew, like chapters in a book or scenes in a play. Your brain treats these transitions as psychological resets, opportunities to become the person you aspire to be. This is why gym memberships spike in January, people start diets on Mondays, and major life changes often follow milestone birthdays. These temporal landmarks aren't magically different from other moments, but our psychological treatment of them creates real motivational power. Embodied cognition reveals that our physical state influences our mental state in profound ways. Standing tall increases confidence. Holding warm drinks makes us perceive others as warmer personalities, and sitting in hard chairs makes us tougher negotiators. Your thoughts aren't separate from your body, but intimately intertwined with physical experience. This connection runs so deep that even imagining physical actions activates similar brain regions as performing them. The boundary between mind and our body blurs when examined closely, revealing that thinking is a whole body activity. Your posture, temperature, movements, and sensations all contribute to the symphony of consciousness. The ostrich effect describes our tendency to avoid information that might cause psychological discomfort. People delay opening medical test results, avoid checking credit card statements after shopping sprees, and refuse to step on scales after holidays. Like the mythical ostrich burying its head in sand, we sometimes prefer ignorance to potentially distressing knowledge. Your brain weighs the immediate pain of bad news against the abstract benefit of being informed, often choosing comfortable ignorance over uncomfortable awareness. This protective mechanism can prevent anxiety, but also delays necessary action, creating larger problems from smaller ones that could have been addressed early. Choice-supportive bias causes us to remember chosen options as better than they actually were, while remembering rejected options as worse. After buying a car, its positive features seem more prominent, while its drawbacks fade, and the cars we didn't buy seem increasingly flawed in memory. Your brain retroactively justifies decisions, editing memories to reduce regret and maintain confidence in choices. This psychological revision helps us live with our decisions, but can prevent learning from mistakes. Like a historian rewriting the past to support present positions, memory becomes servant to self-satisfaction rather than accurate record keeper. The base rate fallacy leads us to ignore statistical probabilities in favor of specific information. Told someone is a librarian, we imagine a quiet, bookish person, ignoring that there are far more salespeople than librarians, making sales statistically more likely regardless of personality. Your brain prefers concrete details to abstract statistics, finding stories more compelling than numbers. This tendency affects medical diagnosis, criminal justice, and everyday judgments where vivid individual cases overshadow statistical reality. Understanding base rates requires overriding intuitive thinking with deliberate calculation, like choosing the less scenic but faster route, despite its lack of appeal. Implicit memory influences behavior without conscious awareness, like knowing how to ride a bike without being able to explain the physics. These unconscious memories include skills, habits, emotional associations, and primed responses that guide action without entering awareness. Your brain stores vast amounts of information below the threshold of consciousness, influencing choices in ways you don't realize. This hidden knowledge reveals itself in preferences you can't explain, skills you can't articulate, and intuitions that prove accurate without clear reasoning. Much of who you are exists in this twilight zone between conscious and unconscious, shaping behavior from behind the curtain of awareness. The licensing effect in moral behavior shows that expressing unprejudiced views can actually increase subsequent discriminatory behavior. After demonstrating open-mindedness, people feel they've established their non-prejudiced credentials, paradoxically freeing them to act in biased ways. Like earning moral credit that can be spent on questionable behavior, past virtue becomes permission for present vice. Your brain keeps an unconscious balance sheet of moral behavior, allowing transgression when the account feels positive. This creates the troubling situation where those who most vocally support equality might unconsciously discriminate, their expressed values serving as license rather than constraint. Mental accounting causes us to treat money differently based on arbitrary categories rather than recognizing its fungibility. Tax refunds feel more spendable than salary. Gift money seems separate from earned money, and we'll drive across town to save $5 on a $30 item, but not on a $300 purchase. Your brain creates mental budgets that don't reflect economic reality, like having separate pockets for different purposes, despite money being interchangeable. This compartmentalization can lead to simultaneously having savings while carrying credit card debt, treating windfalls carelessly while being frugal with regular income, and other financially irrational behaviors that make emotional sense. The contrast effect makes us perceive things differently based on what we've recently experienced. After holding a heavy object, normal weights feel lighter. After seeing attractive faces, average faces seem less appealing. After hearing loud music, moderate volumes seem quiet. Your brain doesn't judge things in absolute terms, but relative to recent context, like a camera adjusting exposure based on current conditions. This relativity means identical stimuli can trigger completely different perceptions depending on what preceded them. Understanding this helps explain why happiness often depends more on trajectory than position, why upgrades feel better than steady states, and why comparison truly is the thief of joy. Pluralistic ignorance occurs when people privately reject a norm, but assume others accept it, leading everyone to go along with something nobody actually believes. Students drink excessively, thinking others enjoy it. Employees stay silent in meetings, assuming others agree with bad ideas. And social movements delay because everyone waits for someone else to start. Your brain mistakes others' public behavior for their private beliefs, not recognizing they're making the same mistake about you. This creates situations where majorities privately disagree with what they publicly support, trapped in mutual misunderstanding. Breaking pluralistic ignorance requires someone brave enough to voice what others are thinking, revealing the emperor has no clothes. The humor effect shows we remember humorous information better than non-humorous versions of the same content. Jokes, funny stories, and amusing presentations stick in memory like cognitive Velcro, creating durable traces that serious versions don't achieve. Your brain rewards humor with enhanced encoding, perhaps because laughter signals social bonding and important group information. This is why memorable teachers often use humor, why advertising jingles stay in your head, and why you can recall funny movie quotes years later. The emotional arousal of laughter acts like a highlighter for memory, marking information as worth preserving in the archives of mind. As we approach the final facts of our journey tonight, let me share that if these gentle explorations of the mind have brought you comfort or curiosity, a soft touch of the like button helps Others discover this peaceful space where learning meets relaxation. The recency illusion makes newly noticed phenomena seem like recent developments when they've actually existed all along, like discovering a constellation that's always been there. Becoming aware of something creates the false impression it just appeared. This explains why each generation thinks it invented certain problems or innovations, why linguistic complaints repeat across centuries, with each generation believing language is newly degrading, and why social issues can seem sudden when they've long existed beneath awareness. Your brain conflates personal discovery with historical emergence, like a child thinking the world began when they were born. The empathy gap makes it difficult to predict our own or others' behavior in different emotional states. When calm, we underestimate how we'll act when angry. When satisfied, we can't imagine desperate hunger. When happy, we forget the weight of depression. Like trying to remember water's taste when thirsty versus full. Emotional states color everything so thoroughly that imagining different states becomes nearly impossible. Your brain's current emotional weather obscures memory of different climates, making each mood feel permanent and universal. This gap explains why we make promises when calm that we break when stressed, why addiction seems inexplicable to those who haven't experienced it, and why advice often fails to account for emotional reality. The decoy effect that shows that adding an inferior option makes other options seem more attractive by comparison. Restaurants include overpriced dishes to make others seem reasonable. Real estate agents show terrible properties before good ones. And subscription services offer bad deals to make mediocre deals look good. Your brain struggles with absolute evaluation, but excels at comparison, making relative value easier to judge than inherent worth. This vulnerability to context allows manipulation through strategic presentation of options, like a magician forcing a card by controlling the deck. Understanding this effect helps recognize when choices are being influenced by deliberately placed decoys designed to push decisions in specific directions. The hard, easy effect reveals that we overestimate our performance on difficult tasks while underestimating it on easy ones. Facing challenges, optimism inflates expectations. Facing simple tasks, we assume everyone will succeed and discount our own likely achievement. Your brain seems to have a narrow confidence band that doesn't adjust sufficiently for task difficulty, like a thermometer with a limited range trying to measure extreme temperatures. This miscalibration affects everything from test preparation to project planning, causing over-preparation for easy challenges and under-preparation for difficult ones. Accurate self-assessment requires consciously adjusting confidence based on objective difficulty rather than subjective feeling. Source amnesia occurs when we remember information but forget where we learned it, making all sources seem equally credible in memory. Facts from documentaries blend with movie fiction. News merges with rumors, and scientific findings mix with pseudoscience, all losing their source tags in the warehouse of memory. Your brain prioritizes storing information over storing citations, like a library where all the books have lost their covers. This makes us vulnerable to misinformation that feels familiar and therefore true. unable to distinguish reliable sources from unreliable ones in retrospect. Combating source amnesia requires conscious effort to note origins when learning, creating mental footnotes for future reference. The bizarreness effect makes unusual information more memorable than ordinary information. Strange facts, weird images, and unusual stories stick in memory like burrs, their oddness serving as cognitive hooks that resist forgetting. Your brain evolved to notice and remember anomalies as they might signal opportunities or dangers worth special attention. This is why mnemonics often involve bizarre imagery, why unusual news spreads faster than routine updates, and why we remember dreams that defy logic but forget normal daily activities. The strange and surprising receive VIP treatment in Memory's nightclub, bypassing the usual velvet rope of relevance requirements. The environmental dependency of memory means we recall information better in the same context where we learned it. Students perform better on tests in the same room where they studied. Divers recall lists better underwater if they learned them underwater. And moods serve as contexts that enhance recall of mood-congruent memories. Your brain encodes context along with content, like a photograph that captures background along with subject. This connection between external environment and internal memory suggests studying in test-like conditions, having important conversations in memorable locations, and recognizing that memory isn't just what we know, but where and how we learned it. The feature positive effect makes us better at noticing presence than absence. We see what's there more easily than what's missing. Notice who attended rather than who didn't, and recognize added features over removed ones. Your brain evolved to detect things rather than non-things, as present threats and opportunities demanded attention, while absences could be safely ignored. This asymmetry affects everything from medical diagnosis, where symptoms get more attention than their absence, to relationship dynamics, where we notice what partners do more than what they don't do. Training ourselves to notice absence requires conscious effort, like learning to see negative space in art. The mood-congruent memory effect causes us to recall memories that match our current emotional state more easily. When sad memories surface readily. When happy, joyful moments come to mind. When anxious, past worries resurface. Like a radio tuned to an emotional frequency, your brain preferentially accesses memories on the same wavelength as your current mood. This creates feedback loops where moods self-perpetuate through selective memory, depression drawing forth depressing memories which deepen depression. Understanding this effect reveals why gratitude practices work, as they tune the radio to positive frequencies, surfacing memories that support well-being, rather than undermine it. As our exploration of the human mind draws toward its gentle close, these final insights illuminate the remarkable complexity hidden within the ordinary moments of consciousness. The naive realism bias convinces us that we see the world objectively, while others who disagree are uninformed, irrational, or biased. We each believe our perception is clear glass, while others look through colored lenses, not recognizing our own filters. This fundamental attribution error extends to groups, cultures, and nations, each convinced of their objective correctness. Your brain presents your subjective experience as objective reality, so seamlessly that recognizing your own biases requires constant vigilance. Like fish unaware of water, we swim in subjectivity while believing we stand on solid ground of objectivity. The saying is believing effect shows that tailoring messages to audiences changes our own beliefs about the content. When we adjust descriptions for different listeners, we begin believing our adjusted version, memory shifting to match what we said rather than what we originally thought. Your brain treats your own statements as evidence of your beliefs, inferring internal states from external expressions. This creates a feedback loop where social communication shapes private conviction, making us become what we pretend to be. The boundary between performance and identity blurs as repeated performances become genuine positions, like actors who become their characters through method acting. Finally, the sleep effect in persuasion reveals that messages from low credibility sources become more persuasive over time as source memory fades faster than content memory. Information initially dismissed because of its questionable origin gains credibility weeks later when we remember the content but forget the source. Like sediment settling in water until the water appears clear, time separates message from messenger in memory. Your brain's tendency to forget sources faster than facts means that repeated exposure to false information can eventually lead to belief, even when initially recognized as unreliable. And now, dear traveler, we've wandered through 100 fascinating territories of the human mind, each revealing another facet of the magnificent complexity that creates consciousness. As these insights settle into the quiet corners of your awareness, some may fade like morning dreams, while others plant seeds that will bloom in unexpected moments of recognition. You've learned how your mind constructs reality, creates meaning, and navigates the vast ocean of experience with beautiful imperfection. Perhaps some of these psychological truths resonated deeply, explaining patterns you've noticed but never named. Perhaps others surprised you, revealing hidden influences on thoughts and behaviors you believed were freely chosen. This knowledge offers not just understanding, but compassion, both for yourself and others, as we all navigate life with minds that are simultaneously brilliant and fallible, rational and emotional, individual and interconnected. If this gentle journey through psychology's landscape has brought you peace or sparked your curiosity, consider subscribing to join us for future explorations. Your presence here, whether drifting towards sleep or still engaged with wonder, enriches our community of seekers who find rest in learning and learning in rest. Sweet dreams, dear friend, and remember that your magnificent mind, with all its quirks and capabilities, continues its remarkable work even as you sleep, weaving today's discoveries into tomorrow's wisdom. And if sleep hasn't claimed you yet, another journey awaits whenever you're ready to explore further. Until we meet again in this peaceful space where knowledge becomes lullaby, rest well in the understanding that you are a conscious miracle, a universe of thought and feeling, forever fascinating and forever human.